Welcome back to the Golden Storyteller. Today I'm going to tell a story from my youth. It's kind of funny. Uh, my kids kind of laugh at me. I've told this one sometimes, but it's a funny story because it kind of depicts the era that I grew up in. Now, back in Golden, back in the day, there was a guy that was named G.H. Stewart, and I never understood what his first name was. I never had the gumption to ask him. He was an older guy. And G.H. Stewart owned a junkyard. Now, the junkyard was located along the banks of Clear Creek, down by what used to be the Safeway, down by the Coors main entrance, so along Ford Street. So if you've been to Golden, picture right along the edge of that parking lot, there was an old junkyard. And the junkyard was basically made up of kind of a shack and space there. There were some old railroad cars that acted as kind of storage things, but in addition to that, he had a lot over in the railroad yard area on the west end of Golden, so sort of the northwest over off of Jackson Street. So I used to sack coal for G.H. Stewart, so Mr. Stewart. And G.H. was fairly aged at the time that I did work for him. And I started doing this in when I was about 13 years old. So that would have been 1978. And I sat coal for G.H. Stewart clear up and through high school. And so it was a great job. Now, in addition to his junkyard, he sold coal. And in the foothills there in the Golden area, there are a lot of people who lived up in the canyon. So Coal Creek Canyon, Golden Gate Canyon, not so much Clear Creek Canyon because there really isn't much housing up there. A little bit in Genesee, but people would come to the Stewart Junkyard to get coal. Now there were two types of coal that he sold. One was bagged, so I don't know where he got these, but he had these old nylon rice bags, so where they had originally contained rice. And he had these in bundles, and he had it seemed like an endless supply. I never asked him where he got them. So he had a 50-pound weight that he would put in these bags. So someone had to bag the coal, or what we called sacking the coal back then. So you had to go sack it. The other option, on the ground there, he would bring in by a semi-load and dump the coal on the ground. Now, this was always in the winter, or most of the time. So he had these giant tarps that covered the coal. So if you can picture this in your mind, the coal pile was basically the dumping of a large semi. So when it was dumped out on the ground, it was probably 6, 7 feet tall, probably about 15 feet wide, and kind of in a dirt mounded shape with a kind of a level top. So if people came there to get a truckload or a carload, and sometimes it would be like a trunk load, they'd put a tarp in their trunk and we would basically shovel the coal into their vehicle. Then they would go to the scale and weigh out the amount of coal. But a lot of people bought the coal by the bag. So Mr. Stewart was really pretty good businessman, and I know when he passed away, he left a small fortune for his family because he was Mr. Frugal. So how he paid me for sacking the coal was by the bag. So he used to pay me 25 cents a bag. Well, that doesn't sound like a whole lot of money to make a quarter for putting coal in a bag and weighing it and making sure it was at 50 pounds and then putting it in the shed. So my dad had helped me kind of look at this and said, wow, we should figure this out how to make this better. So I have to give him credit. He invented this little stand with me, and it was a stand that was about 3 feet tall and square, probably about 2, 3 feet in square, and it was just a metal frame. So it was just a steel metal a square frame. And then what we did is we drilled a couple holes in one side and put in a aluminum, basically like a basketball rim. It was circular. So then we would put the bag in and pull it up over the edges so the circular ring would hold the bag open. And then we'd stick a couple old um, jumper cable clips. So you know the clips that you clip the jumper cables onto your battery posts. That's how we had held the bag in place. Then the other thing we did is he had an old steel tire rim, just a car rim, and we set that on the scale. So that way the bag wouldn't tip over. So you could kind of take the bag and set it in the steel tire, so it would sit there while you weighed it. Well, at 25 cents an hour, you really didn't have, it looked like from the outside, this huge money making opportunity, but it actually turned into be probably the best paying job you could get. Now, this is going to date me, but back at that time in 1978, the minimum wage was about $2.65 or 2.70 if I remember correctly, and I could look it up, but I remember that's what it was because I always made the comparison. Well, if I started sacking coal and I organized things quickly, I could make anywhere from 7 to 10, sometimes $11 an hour. Well, $11 an hour compared to $2.65 an hour was crushing it. But I probably averaged more likely around 9 or 10 usually that. So let's just say it was $10 an hour. So I was making 4 times as much money as anybody else. So I used to ride my bicycle from my house over off of there of 15th and East over to the railroad yards to the coal yard, and I had a key that he gave me, and I would go over there and open up the coal yard, and I would sack coal for hours. So I did this for a long time and made a ton of money. And I never really told anybody about it because it was like the best job you could have. I didn't want anybody to take my job, but it was physical work and it put me in shape. So here I am, 13, 14, 15, 16 years old, and I'm getting some pretty good muscles on me because I'm lifting 50-pound bags of coal. So I'm taking a potato fork and forking the coal into the bags. When it looked like it was about the right amount, then lifting the bags, unclipping the bag and lifting it up on the scale, weighing it, making sure, adding some, subtracting some, whatever, made it to where the scale balanced. And then after the bag balanced, it would put it and carry it over the shed. Well, I learned how to make a lot of money doing this. So sometimes in the fall and even into the cold in the winter, I would get so hot that I would take my shirt off. So I literally was sacking coal as fast as I could. And it was a great job, but it was a lot of work. Now, if you were to approach a teenager in 2018 and say, hey, I got this job for you, and you're going to go sack coal, and you're going to do this out in the cold, and you're going to make, oh, I don't know, maybe 50 cents a bag, they'd look at you like you had two heads. So back in the day in Golden, sacking coal was a reality, and that coal was sold to all kinds of people all over the Front Range there in the Golden area. So until next time, tune in to the Golden Storyteller. This is your host, Rex.